All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into the world of persuasion. Like all the little tactics that get us to say yes,
Yeah.
and we don't even realize it. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And we're using Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, to guide us.
It's classic.
It is. It's such a good one.
Yeah.
And hopefully by the end of this, you'll be able to spot them a mile away and, be a little bit more in control of your decisions.
Yeah, have a few more tools in your belt to navigate those situations because it's true, these principles, they're everywhere once you start to see them.
Yeah.
Like advertising, personal relationships. Cialdini really, I think he opened a lot of people's eyes to the psychology behind the decisions we make.
It's true. It's like he's pulling back the curtain on the wizard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, I knew that these sales tactics existed, but like understanding the why behind them is just like, oh my gosh, game changer.
Yeah. And that's where his 6 universal principles of influence come in.
Okay, so let's jump right into it with the first one, the contrast principle.
Okay.
This one like really blew my mind.
Yeah, well, this one's all about how we perceive things in relation to other things.
Right.
So like, think about this. If you're out shopping for a sweater and the salesperson shows you a really expensive sweater first,
Okay.
like way outside your budget, the next sweater they show you, even if it's still pretty pricey, it's going to feel like a much better deal in comparison.
Totally.
Even if it's still outside your budget.
It's like they're totally anchoring your perception with that first price tag.
Exactly.
Ugh, so sneaky.
It is.
But you know what I love about Cialdini is that he doesn't just make these claims, like he backs them up with actual studies. Like he talks about the one with juries awarding like higher damages if they hear that the defendant has insurance.
Yeah, it completely changes their frame of reference, right?
Totally.
They're no longer thinking just about the damage that was done, but also who's ultimately paying for it.
It's so true. And it makes you realize how easily your judgment can be swayed, like without you even realizing it.
Absolutely.
So how do we counter this tactic in our own lives? Like knowing about it is one thing,
Right.
but like actually applying it seems a little trickier.
Totally. It's about being aware of the context of decisions that we're making.
Okay.
So if you're about to make a purchase, for example,
Yeah.
take a moment to step back and evaluate it based on its own merits, not in comparison to something else.
Okay.
Like, is it something you truly want or need
Right.
at that price, regardless of what else is on the rack?
That's such practical advice.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the moment,
It is.
especially when you're dealing with, a skilled salesperson who knows exactly which buttons to push.
Right.
Okay, so on to the next principle. Reciprocation.
Okay.
This one feels very primal.
It is.
Like it's hardwired into our DNA.
It really is.
It's like that, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Yeah. The rule of reciprocity, it's about that deep-seated need we all have to kind of even the score.
Yes.
Right? To repay favors, even uninvited ones.
Yes.
So Cialdini talks about this study where researchers sent Christmas cards to complete strangers.
Whoa.
And a surprising number of those strangers actually sent cards back
No way.
just because they received one. It's like we're almost programmed to want to repay even if we didn't ask for anything in the first place.
It's so true, but it also makes us vulnerable to manipulation.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Because if someone's like, oh, I did this nice thing for you, now you owe me.
Exactly. And Cialdini uses this example of the Hare Krishna Society.
Okay.
So they initially struggled to get donations.
Okay.
And then they started giving out small gifts like flowers or books.
Okay.
And by triggering that sense of obligation, donations went way up.
It's fascinating and a little concerning, right?
It is.
Like that fine line between a kind gesture and a calculated tactic.
It's about being aware of that potential for manipulation.
Yeah.
So if someone does you an unsolicited favor, ask yourself, are they genuinely trying to be helpful? Or are they setting me up for something?
That's such a good point.
And Cialdini actually uses his knowledge of these principles himself to deflect unwanted solicitations.
Wow, I love it.
He'll just call out the tactic directly.
Oh, that's great.
Which often throws the person off guard enough to leave him alone.
Amazing. I love it. Okay, let's talk about this rejection then retreat strategy.
Okay.
This one feels a little sneaky to me.
It can be,
Yeah.
which is why it's important to understand how it works.
Okay.
So essentially, it involves starting with a large, unreasonable request that's likely to be rejected.
Okay.
And then following up with a smaller request, the one they actually wanted all along.
And we're more likely to agree to that smaller request because it seems reasonable in comparison to that first one.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It plays on our desire to feel like we've negotiated a compromise.
Yes.
Even if we haven't.
Oh, that's so true.
Cialdini uses the Watergate scandal as an example of this.
Wow.
The break-in plan that was eventually approved was actually the third proposal,
No way.
and it was significantly less extreme than the first two.
It's crazy to think that such a major historical event could be influenced by like this psychological tactic.
Right.
That's wild. So how do we protect ourselves from falling prey to this tactic? Because it just seems like it would be effective in like all sorts of situations.
You're right. It can be.
Yeah.
The key is to be wary of any situation where someone presents you with a seemingly good deal
Oh, okay.
after you've already rejected something else.
Oh, that's good to know.
Don't be afraid to question their motives or to walk away if something feels off.
Yeah, like is that old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Okay, so we've covered the contrast principle, reciprocation, and rejection, then retreat.
We've already covered 3.
I know, my mind is blown.
Those are some biggies,
They are biggies, and we're only like a third of the way through.
and we've only just scratched the surface.
I know.
Cialdini's book goes even deeper into the psychology behind these tactics, and he provides even more strategies for recognizing and countering them.
And that's what this deep dive is all about, right?
Yeah.
Giving you the knowledge and the tools to kind of navigate the world with a little more awareness.
Exactly. Yeah, and you know what? All of that leads us perfectly into our next principle,
Yeah.
commitment and consistency.
Okay.
This one is so fascinating because it really reveals how even small actions can influence our future behavior.
Okay, yeah. I've definitely fallen for this one. Like, once you've made a commitment, even a small one, it's so much harder to back down.
Exactly.
Like you said you're going to do it, and now you got to be consistent.
Exactly. We have this deep-seated desire to be consistent with our past actions and beliefs.
Okay.
So Cialdini gives this example of how the Chinese communists used this during the Korean War.
Oh, wow.
So they wouldn't start by demanding information from the American prisoners.
Right.
Instead, they would ask them to do little things,
Okay.
like write down seemingly harmless statements or agree to very minor concessions.
Oh, sneaky.
Right.
Yeah.
But then they would leverage those small commitments to get them to do bigger things.
Oh, like a slippery slope.
Precisely. And once someone goes on record with a statement or action, they're much more likely to act in ways that are consistent with that initial commitment.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if it goes against their better judgment.
It's so true. Oh, my gosh.
It's powerful stuff.
It is powerful. And it can be used for good or for evil, it seems like.
Absolutely.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so how about something a little closer to home?
Okay.
How about toy companies?
Oh, yeah.
Do they not use this against us every Christmas
Oh, 100%.
with our kids?
You're catching on. They bombard us with ads for the must-have toy of the season.
Yes.
They create this huge demand, and then conveniently,
Yeah.
there's a shortage right before Christmas.
Yes. And all the parents are freaking out,
Exactly.
running around.
Parents feel pressure to find a substitute something else that they can get.
Something more expensive usually?
Often more expensive than the original toy.
Ugh. Yes.
And then what happens?
They got to get it. They made the promise.
Christmas Day comes and goes.
Yep.
And suddenly that sold-out toy
Back on the shelves.
magically back on the shelves.
I hate it.
Right.
Yeah.
And those toy companies are counting on parents to feel obligated to fulfill that original promise.
That is brutal. I hate them for that.
They know what they're doing.
They do. They do. Okay, so how do we avoid falling into this trap? How do we say no to the man?
It goes back to that self-awareness we've been talking about.
Okay.
So when you feel that sense of urgency,
Yeah.
take a breath.
Okay.
Ask yourself, would I still make this commitment if I wasn't feeling this pressure?
Okay, so trust your gut.
Exactly.
Don't be afraid to say no.
Don't be afraid to back out of a commitment if things don't feel right.
Okay. I like it. Speaking of being influenced by things, let's talk about social proof.
Oh, yeah.
We all know we're influenced by others,
Yeah.
but Cialdini really digs into the psychology behind why.
It's true. Social proof, it's incredibly powerful,
Yes.
especially in those situations where we're just not sure how to act.
Yes, 100%.
So we look to others for cues,
Especially if they're similar to us.
especially if those others are similar to us.
Yes, it's like that whole monkey see, monkey do.
Exactly.
I'm not going to lie. Like, I've definitely done things just because I've seen other people do them. And I'm like,
No.
I guess that's what you do.
Think about laugh tracks on TV shows.
Oh, my gosh. Those things drive me crazy.
Ew. Like, why?
But they work.
Hmm.
And we all know they're fake.
I know. But studies show that we still find shows with laugh tracks funnier
Yeah.
than shows without them.
I refuse to believe that.
It's true. Just hearing other people laugh, even if it's fake laughter, triggers a response in us.
Wow.
Our brains are wired to interpret laughter as a sign that something is funny,
Oh my gosh. That is so disturbing.
even if we don't actually find it funny ourselves.
That's like my own judgment is being overridden by these canned laughs.
It really highlights how easily we can be influenced by the actions of others.
Yeah, it can have like really serious consequences too, right?
It can.
I feel like, wasn't there like this murder in New York
Yeah.
where there was like 30 witnesses and no one called the police or something?
The Kitty Genovese case?
Yes. That one always stuck with me.
It's a tragic example of the bystander effect, which is directly related to social proof. Because there were so many witnesses,
Right.
no single person felt personally responsible for taking action.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Everyone just assumed that someone else would call for help.
That's terrifying. That is terrifying.
It is, and it happens all the time,
Wow.
in less dramatic situations as well.
Okay, so how do we break through that though?
Yeah.
Like, what do we do if we find ourselves in that situation where we need help
Yeah.
and no one's doing anything?
Don't be afraid to be direct.
Okay.
So instead of just yelling help, which can be really easily ignored,
Right.
single someone out.
Okay.
Point to them and say, you in the blue shirt, call 911, this is an emergency.
Okay.
By assigning responsibility to a specific individual,
Yeah.
you're much more likely to get a response.
Okay, that's actually really helpful advice.
I like it.
Okay, so social proof can be good or bad.
It can. It all depends.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword.
Okay, what about liking?
Oh, yeah.
Because this one seems so obvious.
Sure.
Like, of course, we're going to be more persuaded by someone that we like,
Right.
but I feel like there's more to it than that.
There always is.
Right.
Cialdini breaks down the factors that influence our liking for other people
Okay.
and how those factors can be exploited
Right.
by those who want to influence us.
Oh, for sure.
For instance, we're more likely to trust someone who is physically attractive,
Okay, yeah, that one makes sense.
even if we don't consciously realize it.
Right, right. Are there other ones that maybe aren't so obvious?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Similarity is a big one.
All right.
So we tend to like people who are similar to us in terms of their background, their interests,
Right.
even just like small things like their clothing style or taste in music.
So you're telling me if I'm buying something from a salesperson and they have on like the same sneakers as me,
Right.
I'm more likely to buy from them.
Right. You never know.
Oh my God.
Those compliance professionals are always looking for an edge.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
They might casually mention they're from the same hometown as you or that they're a fan of the same sports team.
Oh gosh, this is like a spy movie. I had no idea. I was like surrounded by master manipulators.
Right.
Oh my God.
It's not always that dramatic,
Okay.
but it's about being aware
Sure.
of these subtle tactics that can influence our liking for someone.
Okay, so how do we defend ourselves against this?
Yeah.
I mean, like, I can't go through life like not trusting anyone who's nice to me,
No, of course not.
you know?
But it's about being aware of that initial feeling of liking
Okay.
and questioning it. So if you find yourself warming up to someone unusually quickly,
Right.
especially in a situation where they're trying to sell you something,
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
take a step back.
Okay.
Ask yourself, am I liking them for them?
Okay.
Or am I being influenced by these other factors?
Yeah, separate the person from the actual request.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, what about authority? Because we're taught from a young age
Sure.
to respect authority figures,
Yeah.
but how far does that obedience go?
It's a question that has fascinated psychologists for decades,
Yeah.
especially after the Milgram experiment.
Oh, right, the one with the electric shocks.
The one and only. Participants were instructed to administer what they believed were painful electric shocks
Right.
to another person
Crazy.
simply because an authority figure told them to do it.
It's insane that people did that.
It is, and the really disturbing thing is the majority of them complied,
Right.
even though they were very clearly uncomfortable with it.
Just because someone in a lab coat told them to?
Pretty much.
You're crazy.
It highlights the power of authority, even when it goes against our own moral judgment.
Yeah, for sure. And that's obviously like an extreme example.
And of course.
But how does this principle play out in like everyday situations?
Well, think about how we automatically defer to doctors,
Oh,
even if we have doubts about their advice.
totally. Or like if someone's wearing a uniform.
Exactly.
Like a police officer says something.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay.
Even if it's just a security guard's uniform.
Yes. 100%.
We tend to think they must know what they're doing because they have that uniform.
They have the authority. That's right.
Right, and compliance professionals, they know this.
Right.
They might use titles, clothing, or even just a confident demeanor
Oh, like they know what they're doing.
to create an aura of authority,
Oh, interesting.
even if they don't actually have any real expertise in the matter at hand.
Okay, so how do we protect ourselves from being swayed by authority that might not be legitimate? Because we can't just go through life like ignoring authority figures.
No, of course not. It's about being more discerning.
Okay.
So ask yourself, does this person actually have authority in this situation?
Right.
What are their
Oh, yeah.
credentials? Don't be afraid to question their expertise, especially if something doesn't feel right.
Okay, so be respectful.
Mm-hmm.
But don't just check your skepticism at the door because they have a fancy title
Exactly.
or a clipboard or something.
Or a clipboard. This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It has. I feel like I'm seeing the world in a whole new light.
That's the power of understanding these principles.
Right.
You're suddenly aware of all these hidden forces
Yeah.
that are influencing our decisions every day.
I know, it's a little scary, but also empowering.
It is. It's both.
And we are not done yet.
Nope. We got one more.
We got one more principle to go.
The
We saved the best for last.
best for last.
Not kidding. They're all good.
They're all good.
This one is scarcity.
Oh, yeah.
This one's all about those limited time offers
All right.
and one day only sales.
Scarcity, it plays on that deep-rooted fear of missing out.
Oh, yeah.
We tend to place a higher value on things that are scarce,
100%.
whether it's a product, an opportunity, or even information.
It's like you want what you can't have.
Exactly. It's hardwired into our psychology.
Totally.
When something is scarce, it implies that it's in high demand,
Right.
which makes us want it even more.
It's so true. And marketers, they know how to exploit this.
Oh, yeah.
Think about Black Friday,
Oh, yeah.
where people are like trampling each other to get like the best deals.
It's a perfect example
Yeah.
of scarcity in action, those
Yeah.
limited quantities, those doorbuster deals. It
Right.
creates this sense of urgency, this competition.
Oh, it's like they're turning shopping into a contact sport.
They are
It's a little aggressive.
a little.
So how do we avoid getting caught up in that frenzy? How do we make sure we're not buying things just because they're going fast?
It goes back to that self-awareness.
Like, yeah,
when
right.
you feel that sense of urgency,
Yeah.
take a breath.
Okay.
Ask yourself, would I still want this if it wasn't on sale?
Yeah.
Do I really need this, or am I just reacting to the scarcity?
That is such good advice.
Yeah.
Like you said, taking a time out, letting the rational part of your brain catch up
That's it.
to the emotional brain.
Exactly.
I like it.
Yeah.
And you know what I thought was really interesting about this principle is that it's not even just about like physical products, right?
Right.
Like it can be about information too.
Absolutely. Cialdini talks about how censorship often backfires
Oh, it just,
because it makes that banned information even more desirable.
yeah, it's like forbidden fruit tastes the sweetest or something.
Right.
When someone's like, you can't know about that. You're like, well, now I really want to know about it.
Exactly. Now you have to know.
Exactly. So this has been amazing. I feel like we've covered so much today
Me too.
in this deep dive into Cialdini's 6 principles of influence. Like, what's the one key takeaway you hope that our listeners are walking away with today?
I think the most important thing is to just be aware of these tactics,
Okay.
to be able to recognize them as they're happening in our own lives.
Right.
Because once we understand how they work,
Yeah.
we can start to counter them. We can become more conscious consumers,
Okay.
more discerning decision makers.
Yes.
And ultimately, we're just more in control of our own lives.
I love that message. And it's not about being cynical or like distrusting everyone.
It's not about that.
It's just about, like you said, awareness.
Awareness, exactly.
Yeah. And understanding, okay, this is happening
Right.
and I have a choice to make.
You have a choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. So next time you're in a situation where you're feeling maybe a little bit influenced,
Yeah.
think about Cialdini. Think about the 6 principles.
Exactly.
See if you can spot them.
See if you can spot them.
Yeah, it's like a fun little game.
It is a fun little game.
This has been amazing. I've learned so much. I hope you have too.
Me too. It's always so fascinating to explore these topics.
Yes.
And the intricacies of, human behavior and how our decisions are shaped by these invisible forces.
Invisible forces. I love it.
Right.
It's like we're in the Matrix.
We are.
That's a wrap on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of the world around us.
Sounds good.